How the Crusades impacted the Islamic world. Imagine a clash of civilizations that reshaped the very foundations of the Middle East and Europe. A series of wars so intense they echo through history to this very day. But here's the twist. While the Crusades are often seen as Europe's story, their most profound impacts may actually lie in the Islamic world. What were those impacts? And how did centuries of conflict leave scars that are still visible today? Stick around because you're about to uncover the untold side of history that textbooks rarely highlight. Hi friends, welcome back to our channel, the place where history comes alive. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another deep dive into the events that shaped our world. And if you love thought-provoking content like this, give us a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. All right, let's dive in. To understand how the Crusades impacted the Islamic world, we need to rewind to the late 11th century. Europe was in turmoil. Famine, internal conflict, and a fragmented church had left it vulnerable. Meanwhile, the Islamic world, stretching from Spain to Central Asia, was thriving. Cities like Baghdad, Damascus, and Cairo were centers of learning, trade, and culture. But all of that was about to change when Pope Urban II called for the First Crusade in 1095. His rallying cry wasn't just a religious plea. It was a geopolitical chess move. On the surface, it aimed to reclaim the Holy Land from Muslim control beneath. It was also a bid to unite Europe under the banner of Christianity, redirect its warring factions outward, and expand its influence into the prosperous lands of the East. The Islamic world, however, wasn't a unified front. At the time, the Abbasid Caliphate was a shadow of its former self, with power fragmented across rival dynasties like the Seljuks in Anatolia and the Fatimids in Egypt. This division made the region vulnerable to the incoming tide of Crusaders who captured Jerusalem in 1099 with unspeakable brutality. But here's where it gets fascinating and controversial. The Crusades didn't just impact the Islamic world militarily. Let's break it down. One of the most significant and immediate impacts of the Crusades on the Islamic world was the unification of disparate Muslim factions. At the time, the Muslim world was deeply fragmented, dominated by local rulers who prioritized their own territorial ambitions over collective defense. The Crusader invasions, starting with the capture of Jerusalem in 1099, were a wake-up call that emphasized the need for cooperation. Leaders like Zengi, Nur ad-Din, and later Saladin emerged as pivotal figures who understood that defeating the Crusaders required unity. Saladin, in particular, became a symbol of this collective effort as he forged alliances between Sunni and Shia Muslims, brought the fractured territories under a single banner, and led the decisive victory at the Battle of Hattin in 1187. This unification, however, came with its own challenges. While it temporarily strengthened the Islamic world, the alliances were often fragile and driven by necessity rather than shared ideology. Once the Crusades ended, the old rivalries resurfaced. Still, this period of unity left an enduring legacy, proving that collective action could reclaim lost territories and defend against external threats. The economic toll of the Crusades on the Islamic world was enormous and far-reaching. Before the Crusades, the region had been a hub of global trade, linking Europe, Asia, and Africa through well-established caravan routes and bustling port cities. The constant state of war, however, severely disrupted this system. Key cities like Antioch and Acre, which had been vital trade centers, became battlegrounds, their infrastructure destroyed and economies gutted. Agricultural lands were burned or abandoned, reducing food production and leading to local famines. The heavy taxation imposed by rulers to fund armies further strained ordinary citizens, creating widespread economic instability. Over time, these disruptions weakened the Middle Eastern economies, making it harder for them to compete with a rapidly recovering Europe. Ironically, while Europe gained wealth and knowledge through exposure to the East, the Islamic world saw a depletion of resources and a diminished role in global trade. The Crusades marked the beginning of a slow but significant economic shift, where the Islamic world's dominance as a trade hub began to decline, creating long-term vulnerabilities that would later be exploited by European powers. The Crusades, though overwhelmingly violent, inadvertently became a channel for cultural exchange, though this exchange was often one-sided and viewed with suspicion in the Islamic world. As Crusaders occupied territories in the Levant, they were exposed to Islamic advancements in medicine, astronomy, philosophy, and architecture. Many of these ideas made their way back to Europe, fueling intellectual movements such as the Renaissance centuries later. For example, Islamic scholars had preserved and expanded upon Greek and Roman knowledge, and the transmission of this knowledge through Crusader interactions helped reintroduce classical learning to Europe. However, for the Islamic world, this cultural exchange was not always seen as a positive. The Crusaders brought their own customs and religious practices, which were often imposed on local populations, creating tension and resentment. Additionally, while the Crusades facilitated the sharing of ideas, they also reinforced the perception of Western interference in Islamic societies. This dual nature of cultural exchange, both enriching and invasive, highlighted the complexities of these interactions and left a mixed legacy that continues to shape perceptions of East-West relations. The Crusades significantly deepened the religious divide between Islam and Christianity, creating shifts in both religious practices and social attitudes. The sheer brutality of the Crusades, including the massacre of civilians in cities like Jerusalem, left a lasting impression on the Islamic world. It was not just a physical war, but a symbolic one, targeting holy sites and sacred spaces central to both religions. This reinforced a sense of collective religious identity among Muslims, leading to a stronger emphasis on defending the faith against external threats. On the other hand, the Crusades also brought about a heightened sense of mistrust and animosity toward Christians, not just as individuals, but as representatives of Western aggression. This mistrust extended to local Christian communities within the Islamic world, who were sometimes viewed with suspicion as potential collaborators with the Crusaders. Socially, the Crusades amplified the divide between Muslim and Christian populations, polarizing societies and reducing the chances of peaceful coexistence. Over time, this religious and social polarization became a significant factor in shaping interfaith relations, leaving behind scars that would influence future conflicts. Perhaps the most profound and enduring impact of the Crusades on the Islamic world is the legacy of mistrust that continues to influence geopolitical and cultural relations today. The Crusades were not merely military campaigns. They were seen by many in the Islamic world as an existential threat to their culture, religion, and sovereignty. This perception didn't fade with time. The memory of Crusader invasions became a symbol of Western aggression and interference, invoked in literature, speeches, and even modern political rhetoric. In the 20th and 21st centuries, the term Crusader has been repurposed to critique Western involvement in the Middle East, from colonialism to modern military interventions. This enduring mistrust has shaped the narratives on both sides, perpetuating a cycle of suspicion and misunderstanding. The Crusades, in many ways, planted the seeds for a divide between the Islamic world and the West, a divide that continues to influence how these regions interact politically, socially, and culturally. While history offers opportunities for reconciliation, the scars of the Crusades serve as a reminder of the lasting consequences of conflict and the importance of understanding the perspectives of all sides. So, the Crusades weren't just a medieval battle over Jerusalem. They were a turning point that forced the Islamic world to adapt, unite, and confront a new kind of enemy. But they also left behind wounds, some healed, some still festering. Understanding this history isn't just about looking at the past. It's about recognizing how these events continue to influence our world today. If you found this video insightful, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves history as much as you do. And don't forget to hit the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Did the Crusades shape the Islamic world more than Europe? Let's discuss. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay curious.